A New Hope is the original Star Wars movie. And it's the movie that started off the legacy of Star Wars as this massive blockbuster, um, every time a movie comes out, it's an event type of franchise, I guess. And it went from one movie to what is it, 11 movies now? Is that right? That's right, 11 movies now, uh, 4 TV shows. I suppose 12 movies if you count the Clone Wars movie. Um, yeah. Then there's a whole bunch of books, a whole bunch of comics. It's an entire franchise now, and but Episode 4 is the one that kicked it off. So I'm gonna review this movie, and it is 43 years old now, so it's an old movie. Does it stand up? How does it stand up to movies today? And I'm gonna be reviewing just all my thoughts about Episode 4. Um, so to start off, I think it does hold up to movie standards in some ways. I think it's a better story than it is graphically impressive. But I think it's more so uh, the choreography isn't as good in like Episode 4, because with the special editions and all that, George Lucas was able to go back and fix a bunch of stuff. Um, he just adds a whole bunch of more atmospheric stuff. Sometimes adds things that don't really make sense, like Greedo shooting first. Like he, Greedo missed from that close, I guess. Um, then he also added McClunky. Um, yeah, there's a whole lot of stuff that gets added in the special editions that helps it. And sure, it's still an old movie. Uh, lightsabers look a bit weird. The TIE fighters look a bit weird. Some of the shots look like they're drawn or whatever. And I'm not too much into the technical aspects of making a movie. But the choreography, that's something that I'm not an expert in it. I don't have any professional studies or anything. But I feel like it's easier for me to understand. One, because I focus on it so much. Look at my channel. It's all about it's all a Star Wars Versus series. So I need to be able to analyze these fights, and by just analyzing them, I can come up with opinions on the choreography and if it's good or if it's bad, if it reflects characters, if it doesn't reflect characters. In my opinion, the choreography of this movie is rather lacking because, and it's not even just the lightsaber duels. It's all of it, from the ships fighting to the people shooting blasters, and the lightsaber duel. Yes, is a bit outdated, and it's because the technology that was used to create the effects is getting in the way of the actual fighting. Vader's suit is probably pretty difficult to move in. I'm blanking on his name. Obi-Wan Kenobi is an old man. Who plays him though? It's this is the kind of thing that I'm not good at remembering. Alec Guinness. Yes, that guy. That guy, he's kind of old, so he's not going to be able to do flips like Obi-Wan in the prequels could, even though through the Force he should be able to, as we see with Yoda. Then there's Han Solo and the Stormtroopers running around, and they have them have helmets on, and they're shooting everything, and they add smoke so that you can't really see. And it's part of that is also George Lucas is still fleshing out his ideas of what the combat is like. There's a lot more smoke in this one than there is in Empire Strikes Back. There's some more smoke, but you get to the prequels and it's no smoke. You get to the sequels and it's still no smoke. But in the originals, it's pretty smoky. Every blaster shot, especially in this one, just has a huge cloud of smoke, which I prefer less smoke, just because it makes it easier to see what's going on. It makes it look like they're not just creating a mess to make it hard to see that, because okay, if it seems like they're covering up the fact that it's a movie when they're just spewing smoke everywhere, I guess, which it just pulls me out of the movie sometimes. Speaking of getting pulled out of the movie, this episode 4 has a few shots in it where it's like, did we really need to see that? And it's like, it's usually like in between key moments, and it just shows like the Millennium Falcon flying from place to place. I remember one specifically, it was between the Death Star and showing up in the Death Star arriving on Yavin 4, and it's like, it shows Yavin 4, and then the Millennium Falcon goes across the screen, and then it shows the moon, and it shows the Millennium Falcon going across the screen, and then it shows a forest, and it shows the Millennium Falcon coming towards the camera and flying over it, going across the screen, and it's like, and then like the whole thing takes like 20 seconds, and it's like, well, did you really need that in the movie? Like, you could have, I don't know. I just don't really notice scenes like that in the other movies. Like, I don't know, like, showing up to planets is not really that interesting without music, without, like, any other traffic, I guess. So, I don't know, stuff like that just stuck out to me sometimes. Then there's, what else is there? I'm trying to think. There's the. Okay, I'll talk about this real quick. The trash compactor scene is a good scene. I personally don't like it. I don't know what it is, but something about them, like, just getting covered in liquidy sewage water or whatever it is there is just not really the kind of story I find that interesting, I guess. But I don't really have any complaints other than I don't like it. I'm fairly confident it's a good scene technically and according to most people, but I don't know. I just don't like it that much. One thing I do like is the magnetically sealed walls. That's a very interesting concept, and you see that later in The Mandalorian. And I just think it's a cool concept. Not sure why they have that for their trash compactor rather than, like, I don't know, like, give your stormtroopers shields. That'd be pretty cool. But who knows why they do what they do in Star Wars. I'm going to talk about characters for a bit. So, and this is where I think, getting away from, like, the choreography and the video effects, the VFX, that's when A New Hope really starts to shine in the biggest way isn't even through its plot, it's through its characters. I'll touch on the plot a bit first. The plot is, it makes sense. There's not many plot holes, it's an interesting plot. There is some things like, if Leia knew she was getting tracked, why didn't she, like, take a pit stop at some other planet and, like, look over the ship for trackers? Like, what are you doing? You just led them right to the rebels. Then there's some other things I'm sure you could nitpick. I mean, if you've seen those, like, few, like, hour-long videos breaking down the sequels or the prequels, you could go through the originals that way too, and you could pick apart the movies and make them seem like the stupidest thing ever. But overall, it's a good plot, and it makes a lot of sense, and it builds on these characters. So you've got Obi-Wan, and he's like this old wise guy, and as we know from the prequels, he wasn't always like that. You get to see him kind of grow up throughout the Clone Wars and that stuff. You don't really get to see him grow up that much, but, like, you see him throughout the prequels, you see him in the Clone Wars, and you see where he was at, like, in Revenge of the Sith and during the Clone Wars, and you see him now, and you can see kind of what he's been doing and what's been going on. So it's cool to see him again. Then you have characters like Uncle Owen and Aunt Beru. Those are kind of brief characters, and they don't have, like, cool powers or cool designs or whatever. But it's cool to see that they have, like, just this practicality and, like, don't get involved kind of mentality. And not like a don't get involved, like a DJ type character or like a scoundrel, but like a just live your life, be a farmer. Like, it's why seek adventure when you could just be, it's like a standard civilian, I guess. And it's cool to see that, and that's part of what Luke struggles with in the beginning of the movie, is The first part of his hero's journey is taking the first step. And speaking of the hero's journey, I'm going to talk about Luke now and talk about the hero's journey. The hero's journey, if you don't know, something to do with Joseph Campbell, blah blah blah, and basically every single story, um, pretty much ever told, goes through the hero's journey somewhat. And one of the best ones like follow it exactly. And Star Wars is an example of that. So basically, in the hero's journey, there's this character, and he is going to get called on this adventure. He's going to be like the chosen one, or there's going to be a prophecy, or maybe he just has powers, or maybe he's just like willing to stand up and fight. Like I don't know. For some reason, this character gets called in this adventure, and they technically part of the hero's journey is they don't take it, and then like something happens, and then they take it. But to simplify, they eventually make the choice to go on this journey, and then they struggle, and then in the end they like they struggle through a bunch of I guess the middle of the movie is like going on various missions, struggling through challenges, and then the end is the climax, and there's this big battle, and eventually they win. And Star Wars follows this pretty much perfectly. You have Luke, he's this farmer guy. Obi-Wan calls him on this adventure after like R2-D2 and like runs away, and he meets up with Ben Kenobi after getting attacked by Tusken Raiders. And Obi-Wan's like, "Well, you should come with me to Alderaan. Like this is gonna be you taking your first steps, right?" And Luke's like, "No, I probably shouldn't." He refuses the call, and then he goes back and finds the Jawas, and then Luke rushes back to Uncle Owen and Aunt Beru and sees like the entire homestead just burned, and then he accepts the call, and that's like I forget what they call it, but it's like the incident where that like eventually convinces him that he does need to stand up and be this hero. And so he goes off with Obi-Wan, and they meet Han Solo, and they go to the Alderaan. Like they've got to like negotiate passage there, and that's the first challenge. And they got to, I believe it's something like called the Belly of the Beast or whatever. But basically, they're in the Death Star, and they've got to rescue Princess Leia. They've got to turn off the tractor beam. They've got to do all this stuff. They've got to escape alive. Ben fights Darth Vader. The Mentor dies, of course. The Mentor always dies. Not always. It's not a rule, but it's kind of like oh yeah, the main character's parents died or whatever. It's like this common thing that happens in a lot of stories. The Mentor character dies, and Luke runs off, and they fight one last swarm of TIE fighters, only 4 of them, and then they go back to the Rebel base, and then you have the climax where, like, X-Wings and Y-Wings, they go up against this giant Death Star, and it's like, there's no way they're going to beat this, but then they have this one little weakness that they've got a shot to do it, and Luke manages to do it after many struggles of many pilots dying and all that kind of stuff. So that's Luke. I suppose that's more the plot, but Luke is part of that in that he is the hero who at first is reluctant, but eventually realizes that he needs to fight for more than just himself. He needs to be selfless, and that's one of the big lessons of the Jedi, and I think it's one of the big lessons of Star Wars, is to be selfless. And Luke is a great example of this in this movie. I think he does exemplify that in most of the other movies, but this movie is like the first one. It's where the seeds of that foundation are laid, to where Luke is selfless and Jedi are selfless, and that's kind of the whole point of Jedi. One of the whole points, I guess. Not the whole point. It can't be one of the whole points. It would have to be just one of the points, right? That makes sense. But anyways, that's Luke Skywalker. A bit annoying at first, intentionally so, and not like annoying to the audience, but you can tell he's kind of whiny. But eventually he learns to trust in the Force and save the day, which is cool. Now let's talk about Leia. Leia is, well, she doesn't know yet, but she's Luke's twin or sister, and she's introduced to us as like this, I guess, rebellion like leader. I guess. I mean, we don't really see her like leading anyone, but like you can tell she's got like the secret plans. She's sending people on secret missions. She's standing up to stormtroopers. She kills a stormtrooper, and they just stun her, which I always think is a very overlooked detail. And also, yeah, there you go. I'll probably get to that in a different live stream. The morality of the Empire, not the morality, but just the idea that the Empire is a better governmental structure for the galaxy, because it's not one country; it's an entire galaxy. But anyways, you see Leia kind of standing up to Darth Vader, and then Luke walks in, and she's like, "Aren't you a little short for a stormtrooper?" And that line right there is a lot of her character. Obviously, there's more to it than one single line, but that line is a. If you had to give a summary of one line, that's a decent line to choose for Leia. And it's kind of just shows her attitude of doing stuff herself, of getting herself out of trouble and into trouble. Um, just a take charge attitude, befitting someone who, like, Leia is such a heroic character because she is willing to do what it takes to um, take command, I guess, is the best way to put it. She's a very good commander. Um, but yeah, so Leia, throughout the movie, kind of shows it. Yeah, I don't know. Just a very determined to fight for the rebellion, and she's not just like this insane, do whatever you have to, like fight person. She's compassionate too. She has a motive for fighting, and that motive is, it's a selfless motive. It's like Luke. She's not fighting for herself. She's fighting for the galaxy, and that motivation is what allows her to have such determination. So Leia is a great character. Also, she's got a great theme. That helps a lot with characters. Now let's talk about Han Solo and close out the big three, I guess. Han Solo is another great character, and he is not like Luke. He's not like Leia. He is in some respects. In the end, he does end up saving Luke, which is sort of selfless. So he's kind of learning selflessness as well. But he doesn't really learn it quite as well in this movie, at least. So, I mean, he's a scoundrel. Like, when Star Wars fans as a whole were collectively introduced to him, he, shot this guy, which, I guess, the guy was about to shoot him, right? So it kind of makes sense. And even in the special editions, the guy, I guess shoots a warning shot, or I guess he has terrible aim. It must have been a warning shot, and Han Solo just shoots him. So he's kind of like this, do whatever you have to. He's not like Leia where he's fighting for a cause. He's fighting for himself. And throughout the movie, he's reiterating that point over and over, which he kind of disproves himself every time he saves someone else. So, Han Solo, another great character. Another great character who's often overlooked is Chewbacca. Honestly, Chewbacca doesn't really have that much of a personality, but he does have a cool character design, and Wookiees are awesome. And he does have personality, because he can't talk. A lot of his his personality isn't as evident as Han Solo, and it's Han Solo's interpretation of him is almost part of the character. It's almost part of his personality. Just seeing Han Solo's reaction, because that's how you know what he's saying and how he's saying it. I mean, you do have the voice, or I guess just the sound of the growls changes, and you can kind of tell his mood. But based on Han Solo's reaction, you kind of tell what he's saying, how he's saying it, how that relates to what he said in the past, all that kind of stuff. So Chewbacca, another great character. Dependable is the word I would use for him, and you see that in this movie. As he's just always there for Han Solo. He's always chasing after him, making sure he's not there, or making sure he's okay. I mean, it's not like he's just a loyal dog, chasing after Han Solo, but it's he's loyal to his friends. So he's dependable and loyal in that sense. Not mindless. So there's Chewbacca, then there's also Darth Vader. And Darth Vader, honestly in this movie is he's a bit, I don't know what to say, because like on the one hand he's super imposing and like he has this like menace to him with how he moves, but on the other hand he doesn't really have that much like backstory explained, or you don't really get to see his personality much. Like he speaks like a robot, very flat, um, but through his actions I guess you can kind of tell that he's this dominating force. Like, you know, he's powerful, and yet he obeys Tarkin. So he has control. He fights Obi-Wan. He's confident. Um, but most of him, well, maybe not most of him. A lot of him in this movie is just his costume, which is super menacing, and how they introduce him. He has a stormtrooper shoot out like a bunch of rebels, and then he walks in, and it's like dun 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 with that original Imperial motif. Um, so yeah, there's Darth Vader. What do you think of all the things I'm saying? Luke's like this, going on the hero's journey. Leia as this determined character who's fighting compassionately for the rebellion. Han Solo is this scoundrel who's learning to be more selfless. Chewbacca is a um, dependable and loyal to people. Vader is terrifying. What like how do you see these characters? How would you describe them? Do you agree with those descriptions? Leave your thoughts in the comments or in the chat. I'd love to hear it and discuss it. But another thing I want to mention is the stormtroopers. And a lot of people say stormtroopers can't shoot. But in this movie, well, they do miss sometimes, but there is an explanation. So, in the original, like, the first fight you see the stormtroopers in, they utterly destroy the rebels. Like, the rebels, like, run away after, like, 10 seconds. It's not much of a fight. It's more just a takeover. So the stormtroopers are clearly shown to be like excellent fighters. Then you see Obi-Wan like pointing out how the stormtroopers like blasters are like super precise, which honestly, like, how do you make it look precise while, or how can you tell it's precise if they're trying to make it look like it's not precise? So I think a better interpretation of that line is actually that their blasters have like maybe a more precise shooting, I guess, um, than the Sand People, which would make sense. I believe Sand People use slug thrower, so you would probably be able to tell the difference. And if not, it like different blasters have different like energy levels, energy concentrations, all that kind of stuff. So he's probably talking more about the blasters. But moving on from that point, then in the Death Star you see, and this is really the only other time you see them, but they're always missing the heroes, right? However, after they get in the Millennium Falcon and are running away, Leia's like, well, they probably put a tracker on us. That's the only explanation for our ease of escape. And that kind of shows that, it does turn out that they did put a tracker on. Tarkin and Vader discuss that, and then the Death Star shows up like a minute later, with no other explanation. So there is that. Basically, the whole theory behind this is the stormtroopers were trying to miss, which I think is a great theory. It explains a lot until you get to the TV shows, which kind of ruin that theory. But at least it works for now. There is another theory about why stormtroopers always miss, and it's actually mentioned in this movie. Luke is like, I can barely see out of this helmet, which there you go, that would explain why stormtroopers always miss. But yeah, it doesn't really explain why the rebels lost so easily to them in the beginning. Maybe the rebels have like, maybe all the rebels need glasses. I'm not sure. Yeah, I think overall, just my general thoughts in this movie are, it's a good movie, but like, I'm so used to it, it's hard to, it's hard to describe it, because it's almost like my measuring stick for other movies, because I'm just so used to this movie as like the original Star Wars movie, and it's probably not the movie I've seen the most times, but it's like the first one, so it's hard to not like compare it to others in this oh, it's the original. How does the sequel change it, or how does the prequel change it? Um, but overall, I'd say it's a great introduction to Star Wars, and just a good movie, good enjoyable movie. Um, Good music, good action, mostly. A good plot and good characters, definitely. It clearly had a lot of inspiration from the hero's journey, which I think benefits it a lot. So, with that, what are your thoughts on A New Hope? Uh, is it okay? How about this question? How do you rank it among the other Star Wars movies? Is it like top three, top five? Is it the best? Top two? Like, where does it rank among the Star Wars movies? So leave your ranking of episode 4 in the chat or in the comments. While you do that, I'm going to think of my rating, which is, I'd say, let's see, probably about 4th. I'm not quite sure. Maybe 3rd, 4th, 5th. Somewhere around there. So 4th favorite Star Wars movie, let's go with that one. The original Star Wars movie, good movie, of course, it's a Star Wars movie. Leave your thoughts in the comments or in the chat.